All right, we have a great guest with us now. It's a show that is really doing well on TNT. You may have been a fan of The Closer before that. Major Crimes is a new show. It just started up for season 3 on TNT. We have a great guest with us, Phillip Keene. Phillip, how are you?
Doing pretty well, Brendan. How about yourself?
Doing great. Thank you for fitting us into your schedule. And it's pretty exciting times. It's great to see the show still churning along now. You've been playing Buzz Watson for a couple episodes now, it seems like, but it's got to be a great blessing for you.
It certainly is. I mean, we had 7.5 years of The Closer, and then we made that transition into Major Crimes, which now we're beginning our 3rd season. We're in the middle of filming episode 7 right now, and we've got another 12 to go for this year.
It's really a really cool show, and tell everybody a little bit about what intrigues you the most about playing Buzz. Because obviously, you said for such a long period of time. What was the appeal of Buzz early on? How has he changed? And kind of a little hint, maybe if you can let us know a little bit of where he's going.
Okay. Well, Buzz started out in the beginning really because they needed someone in that position who wasn't going to cost a lot of money that could recur on a regular basis. And since I was so new to the business, I jumped at the chance when it was offered to me. And Buzz really just had a few little lines here and there in the beginning. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, that kind of thing. And by season 3 of The Closer, they offered me a series regular position. And with that came a little more storyline, a little more character development, and they added a camera to Buzz's hands. And so he started documenting all the crime scenes and making audio and visual recordings of the interviews, and then began to comment on things. So he's kind of standing in for the layman in the audience. He's not a policeman, although he's an officer of the police. He comes from SIS, which is Scientific Investigation Division, so it's SID. And he's been requested by Major Crimes because of his video skills to work in conjunction with them. So that's a little bit of the background of the character. And we got to see Buzz's sister one year. She's a newscaster out of Seattle, and I've been lobbying the writers to bring in Buzz's mother. I think she's a great character. She's got a prescription marijuana card, and I think that could lead to all kinds of interesting situations in the workplace. So that's kind of what's happening now. The last 9 episodes, I've been told, Buzz is going to have a lot more responsibility, and I can't really give out too much just in case it doesn't happen, but you may see him in a different light this year.
Well, I think that's what's really the cool thing about Buzz is you brought up the comparison to the layman in the audience, and Buzz seems to see things through a lens closer to where you want the audience to be sometimes, and kind of helps making sure we keep everybody on the same page. And that's got to be a pretty interesting role for you to kind of have. If you're going to like to know that that's kind of your, I don't know, Jiminy Cricket, but you got a little bit of that whole groundedness that Buzz keeps in the show.
Very much so, and it is a different perspective because everyone else is a law enforcement officer, so they're coming at it from a different background. And their point of view obviously is going to be very different than say, from a civilian's point of view. And what I really like about the show is that with The Closer, we had a single point of view that through Brenda's eyes. And now we have multiple lenses that we view the show from. So based on the experiences of each character's background, like Julio grew up in a gang neighborhood, so he's really well versed in that world. Provenza is a dinosaur, if you will, a holdover from the old days. So he's got all of this curmudgeonly attitude and experience. Tony's Detective Flynn's a bit of a romantic, a little bit of an airhead, but we love him. And with the introduction of Rusty, it kind of brings the whole idea of family together. Everybody's gathered around him to protect him. So they're playing either uncle or grandfather, in Sharon's case, the adoptive mother, and he is now the brother that Buzz never really wanted.
Yeah, it really is a good storyline.
Yeah.
The family atmosphere of the set, obviously you guys have been together for quite a while now, and it kind of changes dynamics when you're, a lot of folks are doing a lot of guest appearances and things like that, and you've kind of landed in a different manner on this long-term role that, really kind of changes all the dynamics, and I'd like you to be able to kind of speak to what that's like.
Well, it's really interesting for me. I compare this a lot to another job that I had and loved almost as much as the one I'm doing now. And I used to work for Pan Am, and I did that for almost 5 years and flew around the world. And it was a really interesting dynamic that we all looked out for one another. And that's pretty much what goes on the set here, too. I mean, all our guest performers are vetted before they come and play with us, if you will. And there are no bad apples really allowed on the set. And I think that starts from the top, with our executive producer and creator, James Duff, Mike Robin, Rick Wallace, all these people in the office demand that everybody behave themselves and, just act in a way that it's our home in a sense. So our guest stars get to come in and we welcome them in, and hopefully they have as good a time as possible. And we try to make the atmosphere as welcoming as it can be so that everybody can come in and do their best work.
Phillip, I know that the roles, we're filming right now. I know before that maybe down the road, but you got any other projects that are sort of cooking for you or that you're interested in getting into?
I'm working with my manager on, I'm actually going to be doing a play reading later this year of Anti-Mame, the 1958
cool.
Movie. So that'll be fun with Charles Bush in Palm Springs, so that'll be fun. But I've got some other projects that are not involved in the acting world. I'm continuously redoing my house, which is a 1927 Mediterranean. Been working on that forever. I'm restoring a 1955 Chevy Bel Air. And I have a huge collection of Pan Am memorabilia. It's about 3,500 items at this point.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. That's kind of the one of the most unique collections that I've ever heard about. So let's back up to that, because you did mention that you were in Pan Am for about 5 years or so, and then of course the company kind of goes defunct, and you just kind of hung on to stuff and realized this is really kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I had my uniforms in a few little pieces, whatever I was left with the day that we shut down. And then I had really become enamored of the company's history and just started collecting matchbooks and advertisements because that's what I could afford at the time. And now I've got a complete set of uniforms, China going back to the 1930s all the way up to the day we closed business, posters, matchbooks, you name it, I've got it. And there are two other collectors in the U.S. that I know of. And we're actually getting together in Long Island the first week of August to kind of put our heads together and see what we want to do with our respective collections. That's
fascinating. Who's got the chunk of the plane?
Anthony Toth, and he originally started it in Manhattan Beach and moved it to City of Industry. And when I last saw him, he was planning on moving it to Hollywood Air in Burbank. So,
fascinating. Yeah.
It's
really, really kind of cool, and I remember one time I had gotten laid off, and I worked for Steak and Shake for a while, and I kind of had the same kind of appeal for a while, and it didn't last with me long term, but because of the legacy of companies and the impact on Americana, Pan Am just will live on forever. I mean, even if, I bet if we, speak to this, I bet if we surveyed America, a minimum of a third of people would still believe Pan Am's flying.
Exactly. I mean, it had such a lasting impact on the American psyche, if you will. I mean, it was the second most recognized brand in the world, the logo, next to Coca-Cola. And no matter where you went in the world, you always had some connection to it. And to this day, it's still going. I mean, there's an organization that I belong to called World Wings International, who's it's made up primarily, actually exclusively of former Pan Am flight attendants. And what we do is we gather together in chapters all over the world and raise money for CARE, which helps women and young girls in impoverished countries to get out from under, if you will. I mean, they're providing them with an education and opportunity. So that's what most of the focus is for this group, and also raising money for various cancer charities and things like that. So it's the only company that I know of that 30 years after its demise, the employees are still gathering together to do good things.
That is really a fascinating legacy and a really interesting backstory to everything like that. Maybe someday someone will just, I'm going to open an airline and I'm going to use the same name. Who knows? Maybe a great way to, kind of borrow from the brand, maybe revamp it a little bit. But it definitely is an incredible legacy. And as I research this a little bit, and your collecting addiction, if I will, it really does shine the light on something that we probably don't get our heads around. You mentioned Coca-Cola, but there's so much more than just the business footprint that people leave, and Pan Am certainly did that. So definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a period of time that the lead up to World War II, that the Germans were in South America, and Pan Am and the United States government got together and said, look, we need to get these guys out of here because they're too close, so I want you to go down and subsidize all these other carriers. So if you look at the old logos or the old lettering of most of those companies in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Brazil, Colombia, they were all subsidiary companies of Pan Am, even in China. So Pan Am had its reach all across the world. And in Africa, before we were involved in the war. We were part of the Lend-Lease program. We flew Roosevelt over on a private plane. It's crazy.
Well, we're talking to Phillip Keene, and he's part of Major Crimes, which just started up season 3 on TNT. Just began, so I'm sure you can catch that on demand if you missed it, and get yourself caught up and plugged in, because it's a great show. It's the spin-off show from The Closer, which was just massively popular, and just a great, great storyline week after week, just great stuff, and a great crime drama stuff that has just exploded into its own little genre and subculture of our society now. This is just great TV right now, and can't say enough about that. And Phillip, before I let you go, what is the one piece of advice that somebody's given you through all of this, and Closer and now Major Crimes, and kind of you hang your hat on a little bit?
Well, we were shooting an action scene in the murder room, and my favorite director, and he's actually a good friend of mine, Mike Robbins, said to me, "Phillip, can you see the camera?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Well, guess what? It can't see you. So if you want to be in this shot, look for the lens."
If you can't see it, it can't see you. Boy, that's a life lesson,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah, great lesson.
That is. That's good stuff. Phillip Keene, it's great to fit you in, and we definitely need to talk again maybe as we get closer to being able to reveal some of Buzz's subplots. And hopefully, as you mentioned, the appearance of Buzz's mother and some interesting storylines that can unfold with that, because that could definitely be timely with some stuff happening in our own society around us. So,
without question.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you again, sir, and we'll talk.
Brandon, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.